What is going on? Is another Car Chronicles episode. I just dropped my daughter off. I'm headed to the flip house to finish it up. Only a little bit of paint and touch-ups to do, and then we are done and on the market it goes. So, I had some questions about the embroidery machines that I've used and my experience with them. And I know I've made some videos based on the Melcos. We had the Melcos for about 2 years, and we did make a switch to the Tajimas. And I'll be honest, with the rate of hats that we were pushing out, Melcos were garbage. They couldn't keep up. We had 12 of them. They, say they can sync up all in the same system, and you can run them all at the same time, but that's really not true. Honestly, it was a lot of back and forth for us that we were dealing with. Such as, we would get an order of 12 hats, and we would put the same design on all 12. Well, you get to start them all individually, and then, machine 4 would have a needle break, machine 6 would have a thread break, and then, there's tensioner issues, and we set them up all the same, because why would you not, if it's supposed to be a commercial machine, why would you not set them up the same? But then we spoke to the people at Melco, and they said, no, they can't be set up the same. They ought to be set up differently. And I spoke to several people that do have Melcos, and they said the same thing. You got to set every single one of them differently. I kind of find that a pain in the ass, to be honest, especially when you're running a ton of hats. Now, don't get me wrong. There are companies out there that run Melcos, and they run a ton of hats. But with my experience, and I'm just speaking on my experience, they're not good for commercial use. They hated hats, especially Richardson's, and obviously the COVID Richardson hats, they were way more stiffer, and they did cause a lot of problems. But when you advertise as a commercial machine, it should be able to work as a commercial machine, and unfortunately these did not. So there's the Richardson hats are the problem, and if you just soften them up, and you steam them for 5 minutes, and you press them, and this, that, and the other. It's a commercial machine. You shouldn't have to do that with a commercial machine. It doesn't matter. If you spend, we spent $130,000 on 12 of those machines, but even one of them, I think, was like $18,000 or something like that. I can't remember how much one of them was cost, but it's expensive. I shouldn't have to spend 5 minutes prepping a hat just to be able to be stitched. And then they're like, oh, if you go to auto caps, then they stitch way better. Well, that's possible. They're cheaper hats, and they're thinner. They still sell. They're actually pretty viral right now. But Richardson hats is what everybody was wanting, especially at the time that I was selling a ton of hats. So we made the switch to Tajima. I looked at Barauden, I looked at Tajima, Ricoma, and things like that. And I spoke to a lot of people. I have some friends that own some Baraudens. They own a print shop locally, and they own some Baraudens. They loved them. And I had some friends that own some Tajimas, older Tajimas, and they loved them. So after doing some testing myself, making a couple phone calls and studying, I realized that Tajimas was the embroidery machines that we needed to get. So we got them. We started off with a 6-head, and man, was it a night and day difference. You set the whole thing up, you make sure everything is systematically correct, and it just started humming. It was phenomenal, the difference between the Melcos and Tajimas. We went from having to spend, we were doing like 500 stitches a minute, or just for the Melcos, which is extremely slow, especially for a hat. And it's very simple designs, constantly having to trim, constantly having to put a ton of backing on them. It was an absolute nightmare to literally taking a hat, running it between 900 and 1200 stitches a minute, depending on the design, and just putting the hat on the cap ring, and pressing start. It was that simple. And when we got it done, very, very minimal trimming. Now that's what a commercial machine's supposed to be like. So yes, it was a little bit more expensive, but again, I think when we bought the Melcos, they were under a false promise. They definitely oversold them, and we were trying to save a little bit of money or whatever. But I wish we would have just went with the Tajimas first. The reason we didn't go with Barauden, the real reason we didn't go with Barauden, is because when we went to Long Beach, California, we met with the Barauden reps, but the one that was on the East Coast, or in my area, because I'm in North Carolina, wasn't there apparently, and the Texas Barauden rep was kind of a dick. He's just disrespectful. He said, he's like, oh, I'm not the rep in your area, so I can't really help you. You need to contact the rep in your area. But the machine is the machine, and that's all we were wanting to know is, like, we didn't give a crap about who the rep was. We wanted to learn more about the machine, and he honestly didn't act like we had the time of our day. And I don't know if it's because I look younger or whatever. I don't know, but he was a dick. So he ended up losing a big sale because not only did we buy the 6-head, we ended up buying within 2 or 3. I don't know if it was 3 months. 2 months later, I think we bought another 6-head Tajima, and then we bought a single head to do tests on and low runs. Man, and it was a night and day difference. So that being said, if you're looking at the Melcos versus the Tajima versus the Barauden, go with Tajima. That is my personal preference. I go with Tajima all day long. Spend the extra money because you're going to save it in labor. You're going to save it in time. You're going to save it in supplies. We were having to buy, for Melcos, we were having to buy so much backing based off of the reps of what they were saying. So much backing. They're like, oh, you got to make it stiffer. You got to make it stiffer. But then they were too stiff, and they were constantly needle breaks. And it just takes time to do all that stuff. But with Tajima, they don't have it. They're durable. Same needles, same everything else. We're not spending a bunch of money in supplies for backing and, trying to fix, tensioner issues and, needles. And it's just, God, and then they would shred. Sometimes you'd have a thread break and you wouldn't even notice it. But let me back up and say, if you're running flats, if you're a small Etsy shop or just a small Shopify shop, and you're not doing a ton of hats, but you're doing a lot of flats, bags, and things like that, you can get by with Melco. Absolutely. Once you get it set up properly, you can get by with Melco. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So do your own research. Look it up. There's other videos out there. Again, I'm speaking from my personal experience, but we were doing, 10 to 15,000 hats every single month and wouldn't even break. Wouldn't even have a needle break. We were pumping through them. So yeah, Tajima, to me, that's the win. Melco, they're not good if you're trying to have a commercial operated business, but if you're doing some mom and pop stuff, run with it. Yeah, and that being said, if you do own a print shop or embroidery shop and you need help getting sales, you need help growing your business, click the link below in the description. Like I said, I've ran a 6 and a 7-figure company, and I've since transitioned into digital marketing to help other businesses grow. So if that's something that you're looking to do, even if you don't own a print shop, you own a business and you're just, hey, how can I grow my company? How can I, get better, get more results on Facebook ads, Instagram ads? Let me know. Drop a comment below. If you think I'm wrong, if you think Melcos are the bee's knees, tell me why. Throw it in the comments. Like I said, everybody deserves their opinion, and let's get it out there. So let me know what you think.